Hello everyone, welcome back to PÖFF TV Studio. I'm Amin Abbasi, we are right here in Tallinn, Estonia, right in the heart of the Black Nights Film Festival. In this episode, we're going to talk about a film, The Memory Boom, and Xenia and Antosh are here to talk about the film, the producer and the director, and also sound designer. So let's give a big welcome to them. Welcome.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Hello.
Great,
Good,
thank you.
good.
All right.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm super good. I'm talking with you guys over here. What else I want? All right, so I'll start and open up the topic of the film, The Memory Boom. So first, tell me the idea. How did you get the idea? You were sitting somewhere and said, okay, I'm going to make a film about dementia.
So we saw there was a commission advertised by a cinema sort of local to us called the Exeter Phoenix. And this cinema had found a bunch of 16mm film reels that had been stored in their basement, the basement of the cinema, for like more than 10 years, right? And they found the film reels because they'd started to smell like acidic, like they were melting, and they were worried that the film reels would potentially catch fire. Who knew that that could happen? So they basically applied to get funding to get the films developed, and as a part of that they commissioned us to make a film from the digitized film reels. But what that meant was when we were commissioned, we hadn't seen any of the footage yet. So we sort of pitched a random idea to make something about memory, and then when we watched the archive footage and started sort of sharing the unedited archive with people based across where we live in rural England, a lot of the responses was sort of about talking about their relatives who had lived with dementia. And so that sparked the initial concept for the film.
Okay.
And the way that the archive footage sort of moves, they're sort of very sort of loose and transient. They sort of blend into one another, and it sort of feels like you're looking at memories inside someone's head, sort of flowing. And we were kind of interested in how, when someone experiences dementia, parts of their brain are sort of walled off, and they sort of slip into different times throughout their life, and it just felt like a very authentic way of reflecting what maybe inside the head is like.
Exactly.
Maybe it isn't like that, but you know,
Sure.
It's an artistic interpretation of what's going there. So yeah, it sort of kind of naturally felt like, oh, we could tell a story about this subject. Me and Xenia both have lived experience of living with people with who went through dementia in their time with us, and yeah, it just felt like a good kind of way of exploring some of the things that we'd experienced.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you open up the editing process and basically post-production, but we need to keep this because this is the golden part of this film. So we're going to keep it and talk it a bit later about that. For first, I'm going to talk about the content. Yeah, I mean, you guys going to be, and we're going to discuss it basically. But in terms of content, how did you manage to, you say, for example, right now that how the person with dementia can see the world and how his or her brain works. So how did you study this stuff? Like, okay, now I'm gonna film about the dementia, but I'm not a doctor. I'm gonna basically show it in a way that is actually working, and they can see the picture of someone who has dementia in the right way.
Yeah, so we spent about maybe longer than 6 months actually watching the footage and just thinking about what the footage could be, how it could be used, rather than launching in and sort of cutting the film together. We actually created the film over 6 weeks, so it was very quick once we started making it. What the idea was that we would sort of show the footage to people who might have lived experience of the subject matter, and show them specific frames from the archive. So, for example, frames where the film had started to dissolve. And we would ask them questions like, very simple questions like, what does this image make you feel in relation to the subject? And really hearing what these people who don't come from filmmaking backgrounds, they're not artists, what they had to offer, what they were comfortable sharing. And then alongside that, we also work with a development producer called Lily Baldwin, who's lovely and who helped us with a lot of the sort of thinking about the points to research around the subject matter. And a lot of Antosh's work prior to this film has also looked into dementia.
Yeah, previous writing projects that I've done have been about dementia, been looking particularly the relationship between someone outside of the experience trying to communicate with someone who is experiencing it. So it kind of a lot of the research is based on experience of being, I'm outside of someone, how do I communicate with them? People who experience dementia is very distressing, and how do you hold them, connect to them, and try to make their life in this difficult stage still. Where can you kind of find joy and connection?
Yeah, basically digesting their feelings.
Yeah.
All right, and understood. Okay.
Yeah, and trying to not panic them, and trying to, how can you assure someone? How can you, having experienced it, sort of find it's quite difficult to not get very upset yourself and push that on the person. And yeah, it's just trying to, I guess we're trying to show audiences different ways of thinking about dementia and the ideas of memory, and how we're all possibly going to go through this at some point, and trying to reach some sense of acceptance around it. Yeah.
We also spoke to one of the contributors in the film is a carer, and she's Filipino, so she would be caring for people in the UK who have dementia. Whilst her own relatives in the Philippines are living with dementia. And so one of the aspects that we wanted to explore was, how does someone in that position, who's sort of supporting people through their job, how do they cope with having sort of a long distance relationship with a relative who has dementia? So it's sort of like, instead of basing all of our research specifically on the scientific aspects of dementia, we wanted to look more at how do people from very different walks of life manage through this.
All right.
In a nutshell, that's what we were aiming for. Hopefully we got there, but yeah.
Okay, great job. Interesting. Okay, so now it's time to talk about the post-production, editing, sound designing. So you did a couple of roles in the film, plus being a writer. You were a sound designer also, and also you guys have passed the process of editing too, of course. So could you let us know what was the process like? The main problems, main challenges. What was you have the narrative on the film, which has its another story to talk about. But first, let's talk about it. Like, how could you manage to combine the words and those films together, and then editing process?
Yeah. Do you want to speak on editing?
Oh,
first?
have a go. Yeah, it was really complicated actually. The archive collection was just over 5 hours long, and so. Also, most of it was just footage of the sea. So I was like, okay, how are we going to make this work? And the way that we actually did it was, we watched through the 5 hours of footage a couple of times, and sort of did writing sessions individually, looking at what the footage made us think and feel in relation to memory. And then I took all those scraps of paper that we'd scribbled thoughts on and edited sections of footage. Multiple sections that were usually about 10 minutes long, that were focused on specific points that we thought of, or were grouped by a specific visual thing: animals, architecture, broken bits of film. And then we individually watched through those segments, and that's when we started showing bits of the footage to members of the public, I suppose you could say, and started asking them questions about their responses to those sort of rough sequences. Off the back of those workshops, Antosh then did a lot of writing, and we sort of together connected those bits of writing to the segments that I'd cut together. And that's when we started to gradually bring in the music. So Antosh very very generously just sort of gave me a couple of songs that he'd made, and I started really editing a lot of the broken bits of film. I suppose you could say animating them. I created still images and I cut them together to the music, and did lots of strange things like putting the music in rewind, which I'm not sure you knew at the time. And then it would go back to testing the footage. We call it testing, but really it was like sharing stages of the edit with people who had experience of the subject matter, so that they could contribute their thoughts to it as well, which did really actually shape the editing process. And then we sort of made the sound whilst we were still editing the picture, which was pretty complicated. And a lot of it was actually finding just the bits of film that were like frame by frame, finding bits that were broken or torn, that I could attach that image to a specific word or sort of feeling that Antosh was trying to get across in the writing, and piecing it together like that. So it was like a crazy jigsaw. And it was a good process because we had a lot of creative freedom, you know, which is quite unique in film. I think normally it's quite strict.
Yeah, it's kind of tidal almost. You have like a wash of a bunch of production being made and then going back to sort of re-editing it, reacting. It was very reactive as a process, rather than we've shot everything, now let's organise it. It was very iterative and just trying to find, we found gaps through those sort of editorial sessions, and then that would create more writing to do or more sound design to do. The sound design was really fun for me because it was just a place of, I just did some sessions of creating music, as Xenia said, to sort of guide that initial edit, and then trying to then weave that all together to the sort of feature length was just this kind of ending process that really, I don't know, just helped took the project to another level. And then you edited again after the full soundscape had been done.
It was one of those things where I could have carried on editing it, but I had to put a stop in place. So we sort of challenged ourselves with a let's make this in 6 weeks thing. And we gave ourselves quite strict rules in some way. So for example, I said, in terms of trying to show memory disappearing, I'm going to use this specific type of image. So we sort of set rules in place for us to not get too lost in the archive, because 5 hours of footage is quite a lot.
Too much.
Yeah, I did a similar thing with the sound design where there's lots of breaks in the film, lots of little kind of blips of light, flashes of light, and trying to get a nice kind of crackle sound. I just recorded some sessions, one session messing around with a tape recorder and just getting all the sound, all the clicky sounds of that, and that's basically every sort of glitchy moment in the film is based on that kind of sound palette. So yeah, trying to remain limited where we could be so infinite.
It was also though we'd never made a film this length before, and though I guess I am now an editor, I've only edited 2 short films before, and to be honest, one of them was during the pandemic when I had to edit film. So a lot of it was trial and error, and hoping that the final export would actually export correctly. That was my main priority. The editing process was quite complicated, but I now feel like I can actually edit stuff, so that's good.
Right, nice, interesting. I just drowned in the way you guys they tell the story and the way you switch. It's everything is in its own place and everything is right. I was just listening. Nice, great job. Sounds like you know your job actually. All right, okay. So for the final question, as always, I would like to ask this: that if there is any possibility to go back in time and change something in the film, what would you change? Or you wouldn't even touch it, or maybe you can add or remove something, I don't know.
Oh, I have answers to that.
You go.
Well, it's so silly. It's silly to say. I picked a style font for the credits and the opening, the memory boom. And I picked exactly the same font and exactly the same colour as on my last film. Because I really liked it. But I know.
Okay, then it's good or bad?
Well, hopefully it's good. But I was like, I should have at least changed the colour.
That's what you would change.
I mean,
No,
the
there's
way you
other
said
things
it's
I
like a
checked.
pretty regret. Like, oh, I took oh my God. But then I like it.
Yeah.
What is going on?
Yeah,
All
I
right.
know.
It's a motif.
I'm trying to think what else would change. I think I set a rule for myself that I wanted to make the film 60 minutes. And though that works with the amount of footage that we have and the contributors that we spoke to, I think if I'd extended it longer, I could have maybe spent more time looking at including more characters, though perhaps that would have made the film less focused. But I guess that's my way of saying I would have liked to have played with it for longer. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for coming up. Thanks for accepting our invitation to here. So the sound designer, cast, and what was the writer? Yeah, the main one, and the director. Thanks for coming up.
Thank you.
And once again, thank you for watching us. Don't forget that there are just a couple of days remain from the PÖFF, so come and see those films that which are having a screening still. And that's pretty much it till another interview. Have a good one. Peace out.